Aperio, aperire, aperui, apertum, to open. Aqua, aquae, water, which is what flows through the aqueduct. Avunculus, avunculi, uncle. But in fact, a particular uncle, your mom's brother. There's a different word for your dad's brother. Even today, we talk about men who have a kind of big brotherly relationship with younger people as being avuncular. Well, maybe not big brother here. Think uncle. Kibis, kibby, food. Kiwis, kiwis, citizen. And notice then that both civic and civil are things related to the citizen who really is a participant in the city. All of those ideas are connected in Latin. Debeo, debere, debui, debitum. This is an interesting verb because it means something different when it takes a direct object than when it takes a complementary infinitive. When it takes a direct object, you talk about people owing something. But when it takes a complementary infinitive, it describes what you ought to do. If you didn't know, owe, that is OWE, and ought, OUGHT, are actually related. Do, dare, dedi, datum. To give. Ferro, ferri, tuli, latum. To carry, to bear, to bring. This is a really important verb in Latin for a couple of reasons. One, because this is a verb that can take all sorts of prepositional prefixes. And many of the verbs in Latin that do add those prepositional prefixes come down to us in Latin. Verbs like confer and transfer and offer. And many of the noun and adjectival forms are in English as well. The other reason why it's important is because the rules that we will use to help us anticipate what the third and fourth forms of a verb are simply don't work for this irregular verb. So learn ferro, ferre, tuli, latum, especially, and notice in the future how often it brings you more information about words you've never seen. Imperator, imperatoris. This is the general or the commander. In Republican Rome, this is a term used generally to refer only to leaders on the battlefield. By the time we turn to Imperial Rome, the time of Adrianus, imperator will be one of the titles taken by the supreme leader, and in fact, the title that gives us the word emperor. Ludus, ludi, school. But when we see it in the plural, it more often refers to games. Board games? Card games? No, more like things like the Olympic Games or athletic events. Again, in the singular school, in the plural, games. Maritus, mariti. Husband, spouse. The adjective marital in English can get us there. Memoria, memoriae. Memory. Shouldn't be hard to remember. Meus, mea, meum. My. Notice the us, a, forms offered in vocabulary. This signals to you that you'll use the endings of the first and second declension to form all of the forms of my that Latin requires. Ostendo, ostendere, ostendi, ostentum, to show. The reasons that you do something that are visible to others can be described as ostensible reasons because you're showing them. Placet is an interesting verb in a category that we call impersonal. Impersonal verbs in English are ones that use the word it as a kind of placeholder subject. The pleasing really affects someone who in Latin is put into the dative case. In English, we say, it's pleasing to me to do something. Latin would put me in the dative case to say something similar. Note, some languages prefer to talk about liking something in this impersonal way, like Spanish, where you may have heard the term me gusta. We say, I like in English. Spanish says, it pleases me. Well, with a different verb, Latin does the same thing. Populus populi, the people, as a group. You could think of them as the population. Servus servi, slave. It may seem like this word should be translated as servant, but let's not get confused. This is a very similar slave relationship to that we would learn about in American history. More on that in the future. Tom. So. This is a pun. This word is not S-E-W. This word is S-O. Ever given much thought to what the word so means in English? S-O? I wouldn't do so right now. Just translate Tom as so. Taurus, tauri, bull. This is a word that the Romans had in common with the Greeks. That's why we have a sign of the zodiac named Taurus. Ursa, ursai, bear. Notice the endings. This is a feminine noun. You may or may not be able to tell from the picture, but we're talking about a female bear. It's not uncommon for Latin nouns describing animals to have two distinct forms, one for a male version, one for a female version of the animal. That's not always true, though. You will want to look to any adjective describing the animal to know for sure what gender of animal we're talking about. Until next time, Wale.